Hey everyone, welcome back to Resto Raised. On today's episode, we're gonna go through a 2015 Jeep Wrangler and we're gonna show you how to remove the door. Not just removing the door, but how to remove a door that has been stuck. So meaning you haven't removed it since new, or it's built up corrosion and dirt up in the hinges, and as a result, the door is stuck and it's no longer a one-person job. So stay tuned, let's get started. All right, so this job's gonna require some basic tools. I'll have the camera person come in over here, and so you can see what I've got for tools. So I've got a soft face hammer, I've got another soft face hammer with a brass tip, I've got my torque tool. Now, this torque tool is the requirement to remove the nuts underneath the hinge. Now, this toolkit comes with the Jeep, but if you're like this owner of the Jeep, you might have lost your toolkit, and as a result, you'll need a handy mechanic that might have it in his toolbox. You'll need a little bit of grease and an emery cloth, so sandpaper, and you're gonna wanna use the jack from your vehicle, as well as a little bit of penetrating lubricant. So in this case, I'm using Seafoam. I love this product. It works really well for busting up any dirt and grime and rust that's might have something that's seized up. So with some of these basic tools, I'm going to show you how we can remove the door safely without creating any damage. All right, so one of the first things you're going to want to do on your Jeep Wrangler is you're going to want to lower the window. So if you have power windows, you're going to want to make sure you turn on the vehicle and we're going to lower the window. That's going to enable us to easily handle the door when we get to that stage. So now that we've got that done, I'll have my camera person come over here. We can zoom in and we can see that there's a strap. All right. So there's a strap and a harness. So if you have power windows and power locks, you're gonna have this harness. So if we take a look over here, just underneath, you can see this harness, and this harness makes its way up to that gray connector right there. And this gray connector needs to come off. That is the power supply and the controls for the device. So we're gonna go ahead and unplug this, and there's a little tab right there. I'm pressing with my thumb, and that will slide out just like that. So once we got that loose, we can leave that in place and we'll get on to the next step. All right, so one of the first things you wanna do before you remove the door, especially if you have a door that you've attempted to remove and it's seized up, you're gonna wanna take your penetrating lubricant, make sure you have the little nozzle on the end where you can get into tight spaces. And what you're gonna do is in the crack here, as you can see in the video, as we zoom in this area, you're gonna see that I'm just gonna spray, have a rag below, and I'm just gonna spray into this crack. What that's gonna do is throw a little bit of lubricant, make its way down into the body of the shaft. So we're just gonna put a little bit in there, and we can wipe off the excess. Now, this video is specifically about removing a door that's seized, but this might be something you want to do even if you're just removing the door and it's not seized. Putting a little bit of lubricant in there will help it slide out much easier. So it depends on where you are with removing the doors. In this case, it's seized, and so we're following these steps. Next, we're going to do is we're going to use our torque driver. Again, this is available in the Jeeps, but if you've lost it, it's a T50. So a Torx number 50. That's used to remove these nuts that are on the bottom. So for the purpose of the video, I've loosened them off already, but all you gotta do is torque them off, and they're just a nice little short little stubby. And you can see the lubricant that's on there from me spraying. So we're gonna remove the bottom one. Don't lose these. You cannot get them at your local hardware store. You'll have to go to your local Jeep dealer. Now, if you don't have the torque kit, that's something else I should mention. You can go to any one of your Chrysler Jeep dealers and they're gonna have the tool for you to remove it. Okay, so now that we've got these removed, I'm gonna put these off to the side, somewhere where I can find them later. All right. All right, so you probably were in this situation where you had removed the nuts and you came to remove the door, and as you were trying to lift, you could not remove it. It is seized. So one of the important things that when you're lifting anything that has a body and a shaft is that you always want to remove as close as possible to this pivot point. The reason why is if I lift from the back, I'm simply leveraging and pinching that hinge. So when you go to remove this, you might want to have some assistance. You're gonna have a person on the front and the person on the back, and combined you'll be able to lift it up. Now, I can't get this door out, so what's the solution? Well, we've lowered the window, we've removed the T50 nuts. Now the next thing we want to do is, this is where we're going to use the jack that comes with the Jeep. And I didn't show you earlier, but what you're going to need is a piece of plywood or something soft. So in this case, I'm just using some MDF. And what you want to do is, you're going to grab your jack and you're going to open up your door and you're going to place your jack underneath. What you do not want to do, and I'll repeat this over, you do not want to just jack without a piece of soft face material underneath the door. Otherwise you will damage the door. So what we're doing here, the purpose of this is to put some pressure on this hinge to make it much easier to get out, and we'll see. Now your Jeep, depending on how seized it is, you may be able to just jack it up and find that that's going to lift the door out just by the bit of lubricant, or you need to take the steps that I'm going to show you. So first thing we want to do is we want to get this as close as possible to the front. And on this jack, we can turn it by hand. So we'll get this close to where we need to. And we're focusing on this area here. This is where we're going to use the crescent wrench. And I've got this underneath. Now, all I'm doing, and I want to make sure that you're aware of this, do not put excessive pressure. We're not here to damage the door. We're slowly going to work the door out. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to jack this up. We're going to put a bit of pressure, just like so. The reason why we want to do that, if you can come over here, you can see how it just pried it open. Now it took me a little bit of force to do that, but that's all I want. I don't want to bend the lip of the door or anything. So what I'm going to do, now that this is open, I'm going to take my lubricant, I'm going to spray this inside and let that soak. All right, don't worry, it's not going to damage the paint. Just wipe it off after any excess. We're going to clean that up. Now the second part to doing this is we're going to want to get this back down. So the reason why is we want to create this hinge, we want that pivot point, we want to create a slight little gap in there where we start getting some movement and we can work the lubricant down. That corrosion and gunk that's in there, that's what's preventing us from moving the door. So we're going to lower this back down, our jack, just like so. Now, this is the important step to having success. You don't want to go in force and try to get the door off in one attempt. Now that you've loosened everything off and we've got some lubricant, this door is still slightly seized. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move it back and forth. I'm going to move it back and forth. Now, the camera comes around over here. This is where I'm going to remove the strap. So coming in over here, I have this strap. I want to remove this strap because I want to get full rotation on my door to ease with the pivoting. So we're just going to remove this, just a nylon strap. Okay, now that I've removed the strap, what I want to do is I want to get full rotation. Now be careful. You do not want to over-rotate the door and have the mirror hit into the side of the Jeep. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rotate it back and forth. So it's taking me a little bit of effort because it's all gunked and jammed and seized in there. So I'm going to take it back and forth, getting as many rotations as I can. Do this until you can feel the door starting to get a little looser, where there isn't as much resistance. What we're doing is we're working the crud out of there. Our penetrating fluid is working its way down, and that's going to make the job a lot easier. But that's the key, is you need to remove that strap because you want to try to get a completely 180 degrees on the door. So we're going to work it back and forth. Okay, so now we're just going to put this back into place. Again, you got to make sure you use the soft face. Make sure none of the metal is touching the Jeep. You don't want to scratch any of the paint. Now what we're going to do is we're going to apply some more pressure. Let's see what happens to our hinge. The camera focuses over here. We can see that we're getting some movement. See if we can get past that point that we were before. There we go. So see how it's coming up? So just the pressure on the door, it's coming up. I don't want to go more than this. I don't want to create any binding. So I'm slowly moving it. Now that I've got it a little higher, I'm going to apply a little bit more lubricant. Like so, and like so. And that'll work its way in there. Now one more time, I'm going to drop this. Because that lubricant's making its way in. Perfect. And I'm going to take this door again, and I'm going to do the same thing, 180. All the way. Wow, look at how much easier that is already. So very little force, this door is moving. So that means that that area that was crudted up and seized up has now loosened off. And there's a good chance that I'll be able to lift this door out. I have a soft face hammer. Okay, so I've got this mallet. What you're gonna do is when you have the lubricant in there and you have your jack on, the option is to tap. All you need to do is tap the bottom section. What that's doing is if there's any crud or debris in there, it's going to help loosen it off. Now I'm using a soft face hammer because if I use a steel hammer, I'm obviously going to create some damage. But what you might want to do in this case is if I come back to this section, and if it's really stiff and you can't get it off, what you're going to do is apply that pressure, and you're very simply going to put some pressure on there. Take our hammer. Now there's a pin inside here. The only way, and I want to make sure that everyone is familiar with this, you need to make sure you're using a punch that is brass. What that means is that the brass is much softer than the steel. We're not going to bend the pin or damage the threads on it. So all you're going to do is by shocking the pin, again, it's another way to loosen off the crud. So we're going to put this underneath, and we're going to use the hammer in the flat face direction. Not this direction, use it in this direction. Why? I don't want to slip and actually damage the paint. So all I'm going to do is tap it. So I can see by tapping it in this area, you'll see it bouncing. You could do the same on the bottom. You got to be careful on the bottom. You don't want to damage the pin. You need to hit it directly dead on. So it's got to be completely vertical while you're tapping it. So that's something else you can do if they're really stubborn. But work the door back and forth, tap it, use all means. Again, use your soft face hammer, work that in there, and I guarantee you with a little bit of patience, you're going to get this door off. So let's see where we're at. All right, so we're at the stage where I'm feeling pretty confident I can get the door. So depending on the amount of work you've had to do, you should be out at the same stage. If you're physically strong enough and your arms are long enough, you should be able to open the door, bring it completely so it's 90 degrees to the Jeep, and you're gonna make sure that you grab an arm on the bottom, an arm on the side, and you should be able to wiggle back and forth, lifting with your legs, and this door, there we go, is gonna come out. Like so. Now that we've got the door removed, what we want to do is focus in on the hinges here, and we're just going to take our emery cloth, a little bit of sandpaper, and let's just, if you got two people, it's obviously going to be a lot easier, but just clean up that surface. Don't need to overdo it. There's going to be some residual lubricant on there from you spraying the penetrating fluid, but we can see we're just cleaning up some of that grime, making sure that when it goes back in, it's nice and clean, and you can accept some new grease. A bit of my lubricant, spray it on my rag. Just gonna wipe that down. I don't want to have any grit or any of that sandpaper on there, the residual from the sandpaper. We'll make sure we clean that off well. Just like so. All right, perfect. We're going to push that through. Just get a small object where you can push your rag through. Make sure your rag is not too thick. What you're going to do after you push that lubricant in there, we're just going to push that up and through. And we'll take that out, and then we'll just pull that and just clean that hinge up like so. Do that on the top. And so anything that's in there, we can remove. Now you can see how there's a bushing within this hinge. So it's possible that depending on the age of your Jeep or how much you've opened the door, that actually wears out. And so you can replace that with an aftermarket bushing in there. We'll push that through. Just grab something that you can, a nail, something with a flat head. I'm just using a screw. I want to get that through, like so. Making sure everything is clean. We'll adhere the new grease properly on there and do a much better job of lubricating, and every time you go to take the door off, you won't run into this issue. Alright, so there we go. So what we want to do now, once that's clean, we're going to take a bit of grease. Now, any grease you can get will be enough. We're just going to put a little bit on there. But the most important part, we're going to come to our hinge over here. Lubricant on that hinge. You don't need much. You just need a little bit. Okay, so we've got everything cleaned up. We've looped up the hinges. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put the door back in. So again, you might want to have two people to do this, but bottom hand on the bottom of the door, and my right hand's over on the opposite side, or you can switch it around depending on how you want to place it in. So now putting this back in is where you might want to have two people because they need to go in at the same time, just like so. So now that we've got that dropped in, you can see how much better that door hinges. So now to put it all back together, we're going to grab our inserts. What you can do with the inserts too is just apply a little bit of lubricant on the outside so it doesn't rust. Now you do not want to apply any on the threads. What you should be applying when you put this back on the threads is some thread lock, what we call blue Loctite. Loctite is the brand. That Loctite will secure and prevent it from rattling out. The reason why you want to do this is because you don't want this rattling out. So it comes from the factory with a slight amount of Loctite. What we're going to do is just put a little bit on the threads, and what that's going to do is that thread locker is going to settle, is going to set, and it's just going to, it can still be, just need a little bit on there. We'll apply them to both. And we'll put our nuts back on. Same thing on this one. That way it's safe for the driver. Nothing's going to easily drop. It's mostly about the nut rattling loose. So we're going to thread that by hand, putting that back in. Same thing. Then we're going to use our T50. Ease up. And make sure that you apply a little bit of force, but don't overdo it. Tighten it up. Be careful with your wrench here so you don't scratch the paint. We're just going to tighten that up. Do the bottom one. Top. Perfect. Now we'll try our door. Everything is hinging nicely. We're going to come back around over here. And so we're going to attach this back together. Same thing. We're going to close the door over here. We're going to apply the nylon strap that prevents the door from over opening. And then we're going to take our electronic plug-in if you have power doors and power windows. And we're just going to plug that back in, just like we took it off. And it comes just underneath here. You can see right there, we'll plug that in. As you plug it in, you should hear the click and then pull back. We know that's secure. All right, so last step you want to do is just clean up. Use a light cleaner, a grease remover, a little light alcohol. That'll clean it up. If you got some value or some entertainment out of this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment below. We appreciate it. And hopefully this makes your job a lot easier to remove the doors going into next time. Safe travels, and we'll see you on the next video.